let's face it, Brian Flores is going to be the star of today's show. His relationship with Stephon Gilmore, his relationship with Tua, which came to light this week. We have a lot to talk about the Vikings defense, Flores' importance to the franchise, what he experienced in Miami and with his quarterback in Miami, and his being instrumental in helping the Vikings sign Stephon Gilmore. This is the Viking Update Show. He's John Krawczynski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan from the Star Tribune. This is one of our football shows at TalkNorth.com. Also check out Jeff Diamond's Vikings and NFL Insider. We've got a bunch of great sports shows at TalkNorth.com, great outdoor shows. Check them all out. We do appreciate it. Randy Shaver's now doing a high school football show for us. We have Mike Grimm on the Gophers, Jeff Diamond on the Vikings, et cetera, et cetera. You know the deal. If you like a show, please subscribe to it at your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services Studios. We want to thank Crazy Fresh, Aquarius, True Vision Institute, Twill, and TSR Injury Law. So let's get right to it. I guess nationally, it's amazing how much the Tua story has resonated, how much it has had legs across pretty much every platform. I guess because it's one of those great debate topics. You know, was Flores wrong? Can you handle a modern quarterback this way? You know, what I'll start with here, John, is that I was really impressed by the way Flores handled it on this end. He didn't try to say that didn't happen. He didn't try to say Tua was wrong. He didn't try to defend himself. He basically can say, hey, maybe I can learn from this. And what we've seen, what we know from this current Vikings regime, is Flores isn't perceived that way in this building, in this role. He's very well liked.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that certainly thrusts this into the limelight even more is I think that you rarely get the kind of candor that Tua offered Dan Le Batard, and real kind of raw emotional feeling about the way that he viewed his relationship with Brian Flores. Now, when Flores was fired, I think there was a lot of kind of sourced reporting about the strains in that relationship, about Flores' leadership style and that kind of thing. But this was straight from the horse's mouth. This is exactly what I was feeling, and this is what was happening to me, and this is why it's so much better now with Mike McDaniel. And so I think that level of detail certainly put wood on the fire. But to your point, Jim, I do think that, I thought that Flores did a very good job of handling it and understanding that there was no sort of sidestepping. There was no way to minimize this, because if he tried to just say, hey, that was in the past, I'm focused on the Vikings, or if he tried to dispute or argue with it, it was not going to look good for him. And instead, what he did was very well done in terms of embracing the feedback, in terms of owning up to some of the things that he did and saying he had to learn and grow from it. And then kind of using his, I think, credibility that he has within the Vikings organization and the job that he's done here and the way that he has kind of galvanized this defense as a way to say, look, that was my first crack at this job. I have learned from it. I'm doing things slightly differently. I'm not trying to change and reinvent who I am, but things are going well here. And this is going to position him, I think, for another crack at a head job eventually. It was very acrimonious when he left Miami. He had the lawsuit. He had everything going on. And I think that can make ownership situations nervous about hiring him. But I think the way that he handled it, the way that he owned up to it, and the way that he didn't run from it was really, really impressive on Brian Flores' part, and a smart way to go about it.
Yeah, both. It was the right thing to do. It was also the smart thing to do. You get defensive and you look really guilty and you look like you haven't learned anything. The other thing about Brian Flores was, let's not forget, he was in a difficult situation, an organization that hadn't won anything. They haven't won a playoff game in 24 years. They've been poorly run, don't necessarily have a great roster. Tua was very young. We didn't know if he's going to be a good player or not. And Brian Flores won games.
Mm-hmm.
He won.
He did.
It was not. Brian Flores is not a failure in Miami. His dealings with Tua he might have gone about it the wrong way. He was not a failure in Miami. He was in a difficult situation with an owner who wanted to tank and a variety of general managers who haven't really built a good team in a long time. He actually succeeded as a head coach.
Yeah, I was, from very afar and watching him and the job that he did with the Dolphins, I was like, man, this guy can coach. Mm-hmm. Like he was getting more out of his talent than was expected of him. They were overachieving, certainly, with what he was at. And then once he departed from the team and you got some of these details about the owner wanting to tank, about kind of the dysfunction behind the scenes, that, said, wow, this guy is a really sharp football mind, and it seemed like a good leader. Now, you and I both, Jim, have seen plenty of head coaches, especially first-time head coaches, who maybe they do try to get things a little bit too my way or the highway. He was coming from Belichick, and we have seen plenty of guys come from Belichick and try to do the Belichick thing and not work. And because he just doesn't have the same gravitas, it doesn't have the same resume to be able to work that way. So when you listen to what Tua had to say about Brian Flores, I do think it was a mistake on his part of not sort of figuring out what your most important player needs and how to meet him where he is. That, there's a difference, I think, sometimes between hard coaching, which I'm all for, and I think is really important, and browbeating or belittling. And it seemed like sometimes Brian Flores crossed over the line with Tua in that way, at least in what Tua was comfortable handling. So that was a miss. That was a shortcoming of his time in Miami. But what you want to see in that scenario is not someone who gets defensive and says, hey, this is the way I coach, and if you can't get with it, then you got to go where I got to go. I think you want to see someone who is introspective about it, who does reflect on it, and maybe says, you know what, there are a few things I could have done a little bit differently about it. And I have respect for Tua and all of those things. And I believe that Flores' partnership with Kevin O'Connell will probably help that as well. We know that Kevin O'Connell has great relationships with his players. And it doesn't mean that Flores has to shift from being a very demanding, very exacting head coach who will get after you and will light you up if you make a mistake, and he will demand excellence from you. But he doesn't have to turn into like a Flip Saunders, really touchy-feely type of a guy. But if he can just soften some edges with some players, then you might be able to take all of the good things that are clearly there from a coaching standpoint, from a motivation standpoint, from a talent development standpoint. And then if he gets a second opportunity, which he should, maybe he learns from it enough to where he can be a great head coach the second time around, with that experience, with that reflection, with that just accountability and that self-accountability. I think that's all very positive for Brian Flores.
I do too. I try not to be cynical, although you have to in our business be skeptical. I just find it hard to believe an NFL team's going to hire a guy who sued the NFL.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Brian. I think, if he continues down the path he's on now, he's going to be deserving of interviews and of being hired. I just don't really see it happening.
It's a great, I thought so too. As soon as when he filed the lawsuit, I'm like, well, you're kissing your head coaching career goodbye. But honestly, Jim, I thought he might've been kissing his entire coaching career goodbye. Yeah. I'm actually a little surprised that he's, that he was defensive coordinator again, that he got it. Credit to Mike Tomlin, I think, for getting him back in the game and saying, hey, we do not have to be afraid of this guy. He's a really good football coach, and I want him, and he can help us. And he did. And then credit to Kevin O'Connell for bringing him in, because there is no doubting he is a terrific just coach. I mean, what he did with the Vikings defense last year, that had so many issues, so many holes, getting them up to some kind of respectability, I thought was great. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with a little bit more juice around him and a little bit, more of a situation of players that fit into what he wants to do this season. But this is one of those rare occasions so far where on the coaching side, he seems to be too talented to let sit on the sideline. So we'll see. Maybe 3-4 years from now, maybe we get a little bit further removed and he does get a chance. But I do think you're right that it's going to be a very uphill battle, and how he handles that part of it, I think it might be too much to overcome, but I think he's a good enough coach and is learning enough now to say that, I certainly would give a long look at him if I were, owning a team and trying to find the next kind of dynamic leader.
That's why you and I should own a team.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I'll search the couch cushions and see if we can come up with a little bit of coin for it. So
we're just a couple billion shy.
Yeah.
I want to get in more of the Belichick angle, then we will talk about Stephon Gilmore and what the secondary looks like. We do want to welcome Crazy Fresh.
Attention all football fans, this season Crazy Fresh is bringing you the ultimate game day experience with our Gold Ticket Sweepstakes. Craving a win? Look no further than your favorite Crazy Fresh taco dip. Hidden inside select packages, you could find a gold ticket, your instant pass to a professional football game. But that's not all. Scan the QR code under the lid for your chance to win big. 75-inch TVs, Blackstone griddles, and more. It's time to gear up and get in on the action. The Crazy Fresh Gold Ticket Sweepstakes is running now through January 31st. Don't miss out. Pick up your Crazy Fresh taco dip today and start winning. Crazy Fresh, where game day just got fresher.
Scott for Aquarius Home Services. Making your life better is a huge priority for us at Aquarius. It may start with providing worry-free water or heating and cooling systems you can trust, but there's another very important reason. Aquarius is family-owned and operated. We work hard to earn the right to be recommended. That means upfront, no-surprise pricing, providing a 5-star experience, and treating your home and time with respect. And knowing we're just a click away at AquariusHomeservices.com.
Yes, by the way, we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio, and I am eating Crazy Fresh all the time now. I love it. We also want to let you know about Twill in the Edina Galleria. Again, I went on a long vacation, and pretty much everything I ate. Excuse me. I had such a good time in Italy and Greece eating. Everything I wore was from Twill. So just a reminder, it's in the Edina Galleria. It's run and owned by Scott Dayton. He's been there forever. To me, it's the best men's clothing store in Minnesota. It's great for gifts. He's got everything from little trinkets that he's picked up on trips to Vietnam. He handpicks everything. He hand selects the brands he uses. It's not a department store. He will only carry something if he loves it. I happen to love pretty much everything in the store, everything from golf shorts to fine Italian suits that are custom fitted. You can find there, and it is the most relaxing shopping experience you'll ever have. The people who work there are knowledgeable, friendly, but relaxed. You can just browse, you can walk through, and nobody's going to bother you, but they're there if you need their help. So twillmn.com is the website. Twill in the Edina Galleria is the shop. I highly recommend it. Tell them Jim Souhan sent you. The other interesting thing about this Flores deal is I think we've seen a lot of Belichick assistants go elsewhere and fail because Bill was propping them up. They really weren't doing the work. They were just part of Bill's program. Flores is different in so many ways. First of all, again, he won games there, even in a difficult situation. He won games for a franchise that wanted to tank. That's hard to do. But if there was a negative impact in terms of Belichick on Flores, Belichick doesn't like his owner, Robert Kraft, and he did inspire a certain amount of that military-grade paranoia about anybody outside the locker room. And I wonder if that affected Flores in his dealings with both, people in that organization and his quarterback, where he just thought, this is the way you win, is to behave like this.
Yeah, I do think that has been a problem for many a Bill Belichick disciple over the years. There's two things that they look at with Bill and they want to try to emulate as they go and build their own program in another spot. And one is the exacting, the hard-nosed, the demanding kind of demeanor. Okay. And then, but the second thing that they cannot usually replicate is Tom Brady. And, wherever they go, generally, always, no matter where they go, the quarterback is worse than Tom Brady. But, I think that it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing where for Bill Belichick, for Greg Popovich, for some of the more famous kind of, irascible, crusty leaders of teams that we see, you have to have an extreme level of success to be able to validate that approach with this modern athlete. It's just the way that it is. And so if you go somewhere new and try to be that way right off the bat without the quarterback who completely buys into that approach and is all world, without some of the other talent that really buys into it, it really is hard for you to exact and to enact that strategy because you don't have the mountain of success to stand on from a credibility standpoint, because everyone knows that Bill Belichick controls everything in New England, or controlled. He's not there anymore. So when you go somewhere else and say, this is how we did it in New England, it's like, well, no, this is how Bill did it, and you followed suit with it. So there's an immediate sort of skepticism about how much did you really play a role in that? And that's the difficult thing with being that way. You almost have to have the success first, or at least some modicum of it, and then you start to really dig your teeth into and your claws into a player and kind of break them down if you have to, and say, this is my way or the highway. This is how we do things. Because for, in the initial upgoing, and even with Belichick in Cleveland and in the, and everything, it was like, oh, it's your way or the highway. Well, I'm taking the highway. Like, that's just the way that it happened. So, I think that a lot of Matt Patricia, there's a million of these guys that have come and gone elsewhere and just have not had the same success because they are not Bill Belichick, and they did not have all of that credibility to stand on. And maybe there was a little bit of that to Brian Flores in Miami, but he was starting to win there. So that, you can start to build up that credibility, but you have to be just on the same page with your franchise quarterback. There's no getting around that.
No doubt. All right, let's get to Stephon Gilmore and what the secondary looks like. Spoiler alert, looks better. We'll talk about that. But first, John, tell us about your experience with True Vision Institute.
True Vision Institute in Bloomington, going on, I think, 3 weeks now. Of having LASIK surgery at True Vision, and it literally has. It's changed my life. I mean, I know that you probably hear things like that, and I did too, for years and years while wearing glasses and contacts. And I had friends and people, coworkers and stuff who did it and would say, "Oh, you got to do it. It's the best thing ever." And I'd be like, "Okay, it can't be that good." It really is that good. I was with my kids at a water park last weekend, diving right into the pool. No worry about my glasses falling off, or if I put contacts in and them getting gummed up while I'm swimming, how uncomfortable that is. I could just see. Everything was clear as a bell. So the experiences that you have, being able to wake up in the morning and not have to fumble around for glasses to put them on, is great. And the people at True Vision, including Dr. Chu, in the procedure itself is so calming, so welcoming, makes it so easy to navigate the process. And everyone around him just makes the experience second to none. I cannot recommend it enough. Go to truevision.com to set up a consultation. They will take you through all of the steps, and it's a no obligation, no hassle type, no pressure type of environment. They will show you all of the options for your vision correction, not just LASIK, and they will get you something that works well for you. If you do LASIK like I did, I cannot recommend it enough. It was so easy. It was one quick day of recovery, and I was seeing clearly and better than I ever have before. And life is just so much easier now. So go to chewvision.com, set up your consultation, and talk to the good folks there. Tell them John Krawczynski sent you, and get forward and stop spending money on glasses and contacts and start living your life a lot freer and a lot easier. I did, and I should have done it 10 years ago.
Big thanks to longtime sponsor TSR Injury Law. They also sponsor the John Krawczynski Show here on the network. You definitely want to check out the John Krawczynski Show if you're into the Timberwolves and basketball in general. TSR Injury Law has been great with us. They will be great for you if you ever need them. If you are injured, call 612-TSR-TIME, 612-TSR-TIME. Call them now. Thank them later. They will not charge you unless they win your case, and they win a lot of cases. That's why they can hang out with Nas Reed and have billboards up all over the state. One of Minnesota's great success stories, TSR Injury Law. So I've been saying for months that I wasn't going to be sure that this team was actually invested, or ownership was actually invested in trying to win this season, use it as more than a platform for building for 2025, unless they went out and got Stephon Gilmore or someone like him. Well, they did.
They did. And I thought your column was spot on after it, Jim, in terms of like, it does really speak to their belief in this team being competitive. They're spending a bunch of money to bring in a very good cornerback on a team that I was with you, Jim. Like, I thought, hey, maybe this is going to be a gap year. You get through this year, and then you have all that money to spend next off season, and you can really make your move and get back into it. But in going out and getting Gilmore and spending the money that they did to do it, I think it is sort of a vote of confidence in Sam Darnold, to be honest, because, you have JJ McCarthy get injured, and he is not going to be available to you this year. So how good can Sam Darnold be? And if there were any reservations about him being able to run the offense competently, do a good job, and give this team, a chance to score points and support the defense, then there's really no reason to go out and spend money on a cornerback like this, a veteran guy, and bring him in here. And so I think that they have seen enough from Darnold in this offseason program, in the preseason and the training camp, to say, you know what, he can do this at a good level, and we can get a good offense going with Jefferson, with Addison, with Hawkinson when he comes back, and Aaron Jones and everything. So let's give this team the best chance to be competitive. It's still going to be tough. So you have Chicago, Green Bay, and Detroit are going to be tough in the division, but I think it's a sign of faith that, hey, Darnold can do this. Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips can help him do this. And so let's have a defense that can support him as well. And I think it's a big statement on what their ambitions are entering this season.
Yes. And now you have, let's say it's a 3 cornerback set. You have 3 veteran cornerbacks who know what they're doing out there. You have Murphy able to play inside if they want him there. You have Shaq Griffin on the outside. And then you have Fabian Moreau, who actually played pretty well last year, in Denver. Mm-hmm. He's your 4th corner. That's a pretty good 4th corner.
Yeah. And I also think, Jim, like, we haven't really talked about it that much. But I think they needed to go and get Gilmore, in part because, like, that Shaq Griffin hamstring thing is sort of just hanging on the side.
True.
And maybe he's going to be totally fine. And, they are just being extra cautious. And once week 1 comes, there's going to be no worse for the wear. But anytime a cornerback who is a little bit older, like Griffin is, has that soft tissue injury in the preseason, it's a warning sign. Like, that could easily come back or flare up or get aggravated early on in this season. And then if you lose him for 3, 4, 5 weeks in the regular season, now you are really in a tough spot. And so at least Gilmore gives them some kind of even more insurance, more than insurance. He's just a really good player, but we just haven't seen Griffin at all yet. And so I'm a little bit, until I see him out there and really playing with no worse for the wear, I'm going to be a little bit kind of watching out of my side eye, just like how healthy is he?
Right. Yeah, and that's where Moreau can come in as a third
Yes.
corner. Also, what they've done here between Gilmore and Moreau is they've gone from being like, okay, Caleb Evans has to be really good this year, to being like, okay, Caleb Evans is now either
expendable
at a depth or a project.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yep. I think that what this does is it does give, and we started this show off talking about Brian Flores and like what it gives Flores more players who he can use and trust. I do think that they had a hard time, understandably so, being in a position where we have to trust a Caleb Evans. Now they don't have to, barring injuries and other things that happen with it. So any way that, you can move, guys down the pecking order that aren't quite either ready for it or may never be ready for it, I think is a good thing. It's like, it's like signing a legit number 3 hitter for your baseball lineup. And now you can, the guy that you had at number 3 actually slides up to number 2. And then you can kind of just move the pieces of the puzzle around a little bit more and they fit better in their spots. That it can be the same thing here with Gilmore, like adding him in bumps Caleb Evans down a little bit more. And now you're not putting him in positions that he's not ready for, not capable of doing. And then that should translate to much more connectivity and just synergy with the entire defense. If you have that cornerback spot at least competently addressed, whereas before it was obviously a real problem.
Yes. Hey, congratulations to us. I think we are in line for some kind of an award. We just did an entire Vikings show in 2024 without talking about quarterbacks.
Amazing. I kind of snuck in Darnold a little bit in my Gilmore analysis, but I do think we deserve it. Yeah, that was kind of just a little bit of a, just a little side tangent, but we did it, and we need to give listeners what the unexpected, and they certainly did not expect, a 40-minute podcast with almost zero discussion about quarterbacks. Good for us.
We've also done an admirable job of not mentioning Aaron Rodgers. We've barely mentioned him in this entire calendar year, which is the way it should be.
Let's keep that going.
Yes.
Like let's see how long we can go. A Rodgers-less streak on the Viking Update show. I think that would be another badge of honor for us.
We'll have to call him he who shall not be named, or shall not be mentioned at least. God, as a professional journalist, I don't really root hard against many people, but I hope that whole thing blows up.
I mean, it just seems destined to do that. At this point, I mean, he can't stay out of his own way. And he's at a point in his career where he is no longer Superman. And so, I would not bet on the Jets, this year, and I would not bet on that offense for sure.
I know. And they have so much talent. It's such a good roster, and the right quarterback really could take them someplace. I don't know. I have this, I'm completely biased against Aaron Rodgers as a human, as a leader. So I just am not going to predict any success there, even though they do have a very good roster. I also don't know if the coach is any good.
That's a stay away.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, John. Thank you. Everybody check out the John Krawczynski Show and our many other shows at TalkNorth.com. Subscribe at your favorite podcast app when you find a show you like, and we'll talk to you next week.